guys, welcome back to The Naked Truth with Lauren. If you're new here, welcome for the first time. There's been a slight brand update. It's now The Naked Truth with Lauren is the full name of the podcast. This is a space where we have real, honest conversations about mental health, mindfulness, and manifestation. You'll hear from myself and other brave souls as we open up about our journeys and feelings and share strategies to manage stress, build resilience, and bring our dreams to life. Hopefully, you'll feel a little less alone after listening. I am your host, Lauren, a 28-year-old professional living in DC, passionate about creating spaces for open conversations and building genuine community. And I am so glad you're here. In this episode, we are diving deep into the topics of navigating life across different countries and how moving affects mental health, career pivots and common challenges that young professionals face, and entrepreneurship with fellow UMD alumni, Analía Gomez Vidal. Analía grew up in Argentina and she moved to the US in 2014 to get her PhD in government and politics. We met at a recent UMD alumni event about entrepreneurship, where Analía told me that she left her full-time job to pursue building out her own business a few weeks before. Analía founded AGV Services LLC, which is a coaching and consulting practice that helps ambitious professionals in the US and abroad gain awareness, navigate growth, and achieve their vision. She has extensive experience navigating life across countries and coaching others through their career journeys. She has successfully pivoted careers several times while holding various types of visas in the US, and now she's here to share her journey. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So up top, I want to know, what has been your high and low of the past week?
I think they're both the same, which is like the journey of entrepreneurship.
Okay, fair.
So on one hand, there is like the highs of, like getting very excited about what I'm doing, the conversations that I'm having with people, serving my clients, serving my community as a whole, and really finding myself working on the spaces and issues that I care about deeply and making sure that ultimately I facilitate that people either individually or as part of a community feel empowered to develop the lives that they really want for themselves. And on the other hand, there is also like the lows of entrepreneurship, which, like on the way here, I was reflecting on this and realizing that it's so easy to love and support yourself through the waves and accruing the accolades of like everything that you're achieving. But it's also harder and at the same time, like more rewarding in the long run when you're loving yourself hard through the downs or like the uncertainty of what's going to happen next. And to really just like embrace that faith and believe in yourself that is going to propel you forward. And so I think that I definitely have felt the highs and the lows in that journey this week.
That makes total sense. When you're not seeing the results that you want right away,
yes,
obviously your confidence wavers and you have to have that blind faith and confidence in yourself and like look inward to succeed.
Yeah, to just be like, you know what? You might not see it. It's like you're doing the right thing and you're believing in yourself and you're betting on yourself. And I think like that's a truer test of how much you love yourself and like what you envision for the world that you want to live in. So that's where we're at.
It takes a lot of strength and I understand, but not even as much as you. I mean, you've been doing this longer than I have. I have the utmost respect and confidence in you. And
thank you.
I know my self-love will be tested throughout this whole journey. Okay, so you moved from Argentina.
Yes.
Moving to a new country, I know can be very scary. It can be exciting. It can be overwhelming. What was your mental health journey like as you navigated life across different countries and adjusted to life in the US?
Yeah, I would say it was a journey. I think for me, growing up in Argentina, I grew up in a family where like I am the first one to even finish college.
Wow.
And I was very much raised on this idea that, like you have to be a good student and you have to be a hard worker and like that's how you're going to succeed. And so I like embraced that, and I worked really hard, and my parents expected me to graduate from college. And then I just really embraced the good student mentality. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, I've always been drawn to a career that had an international component to it. I loved learning languages growing up. I learned multiple languages. And so like that exposure to other cultures was just like always mind blowing to me and like tremendously stimulating. I also loved Model UN. I fantasized about being a diplomat at some point.
Oh, okay.
And so over time, I was like drawn to research and the idea of pursuing a PhD. And so basically, I made sure that everything that I was doing in my life was getting me a little bit closer to that goal, even though I had not met anybody around me, like growing up, that have done it themselves. And so when I got to the US, like I remember my parents did not really even understand what a PhD was, like let alone like thinking that there was an institution out there who was going to pay for me to like come to the US and study. They were like, what are you talking about? That's no. And I remember when I showed up at home with my admissions letter from UMD.
Wow.
Like a few days before my birthday. And I showed up and I said, like, I'm going. And I remember my mom started bawling. Because she told me I didn't think this was real. And then so I didn't think that you were going to do it.
So she was sad to lose you.
She was sad that I had achieved what I had set myself to achieve, because that meant that I was right and that I was leaving the country. Yeah, it's like she has not gotten over it that so far.
Because she still lives in Argentina.
Yes.
And you live full time.
Yes. So I travel a fair amount, and like I think one of my long-term goals have always been to integrate my life in a way where like I have flexibility to, like be there as needed and to be more present there, but also, continue building on the life that I've been, developing here. And so, yeah, but, like coming here, on one hand, it was a little bit of like the cultural shock of,
for sure.
And I think it wasn't as much about the culture itself as like the adjustment to this being my first time as a young adult, living by myself, like taking care of myself in an environment that was not familiar. And also at the same time adjusting to, like the graduate life and the expectations and the pressure associated with it. So there were like many layers to it. And I think the first couple of years in particular were like times where I felt very lonely and I didn't necessarily identify how. And so like in retrospective, that's where I start seeing, how like some of my behavior, my preferences for, doing certain activities or just like leaning into work so hard. We're also trying to like compensate for the fact that I was trying to make a place home, and it was like really hard to kind of like pin what that meant to me in the first place. So yeah,
that's so scary. That's so inspiring, especially like identifying that you wanted to get a PhD. How old were you when you decided?
I think I was around like 19 or 20. I went to a school where like a lot of people were already kind of like thinking about that in some way. And so like I went to a school in Argentina where like especially I studied economics. And so like there was kind of like a clear path towards like, like you graduate and you pursue your master's, then you have access to applying for a PhD through that journey. And for me, what's interesting though, is like, I almost got kicked out of that college at one point because there was a rule of how many subjects or how many classes you could fail within the first 2 years and then the other 2 years. And I did not live in the area. I commuted 5 hours per day, every day.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was a combination of like being exhausted, but also like having a hard time doing well, specifically in like math classes. And so eventually I failed 3 classes, like within the first 2 years. And if I failed the fourth one, sorry, then I would be kicked out of the school.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, you know, like there is a lot more to that story, but basically I was not the best student, and not because I didn't try. And then over time, I still wanted to pursue, you know, like a PhD, and I wanted to come to the US and like do research. And one of my professors at one point told me, there's no way you're ever going to be competitive to achieve a PhD.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember leaving their office and just like bawling on the bus on my way back home and being like, okay, if this is not the way, if like the path that they had crafted for someone to achieve that is not the way that I'm going to do it, how else can I do it? And so that kind of like unlocked this idea of I can still have that goal and I can still dream about that and go about it in a different way, because I believe that this is really what matters to me. And I think, you know, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm also realizing just how early on so much of what I'm about, like personally, professionally, but also what I support people with, has to do with this. It's like you have a goal, you're determined, like you have what it takes. You might just not do it the same way that people expect you to or want you to.
Yeah. Did hearing that from that professor, like you wouldn't be competitive to get a PhD to apply and get accepted, did that motivate you more? Like, I'm going to prove you wrong? Or did that diminish your confidence and motivation?
I think both. Because, you know, especially when it's someone that you respect a lot, it takes a hit. You start kind of like wondering, it's like, am I even doing the right thing? Or it's like, does this even make sense? And so, of course, like you have that moment of like, oh, maybe I'm just very delusional.
You gotta be a little delulu to accomplish your dreams.
But then on the other hand, you know, I think that there have been different points in time in which I proved myself right more so than proving other people wrong.
Oh, okay. So it's like a game with yourself.
Yeah, and especially because, you know, when I start looking back, and not necessarily in a professional or academic environment, but just like personally as well, like there are different situations where I bet on that and on that idea that I have, or in that perspective, and to be able to see it flourish despite, you know, how much hard work like it might take, like that makes it worth it, because like I made it happen.
It's that much more impressive.
Yeah. And you know, like that was an interesting time, because especially when you come from, you know, being a good student at school and like all of this stuff, and you get all the praise and the validation, right? It's like the waves and the accolades, right? It's like, that's when it's easier. But then you, like, I go into college and I'm about to get kicked out and I'm not a good student, like by their metrics, and I commute 5 hours per day every day, just knowing that this is going to work out in some way. And I had classmates who were like, there's no way that you graduate in time with us. Like, you're not going to walk in our graduation ceremony. And then I am there and I go and I pat them in the back and say, hi, see?
That is so rewarding. I love that for you. Good to see you here. Look where I am now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And, you know, it's like, it doesn't come from a place of better than. It comes from a place of like, let me prove myself right. And so I think that that's where it comes from.
Okay. I love that story. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Okay, so you get to the U.S. I know the U.S. immigration system is known for being very complex, very stressful.
Yes.
I don't know from firsthand experience, but I'm excited to learn from yours. How did the uncertainty of visas and immigration status impact your mental well-being, and how did you cope during those challenging times?
Probably we have a multi-series podcast about it. The thing that stands out the most when it comes to kind of like explaining to someone else what it feels like is that you think about like your life feels like on eternal conditionality.
What do you mean?
What I mean by that is that, like you go through your days and you work hard and you pursue your degree and like you do your work and like you feel good about it and you have your friendships and your communities, your relationships, all that stuff. But there is always this sense of it's all conditional on the visa, on the approval, on the permission, on the expiration date. There is a underlying uncertainty about it all.
Like it could all go away.
Exactly.
In like a day.
Yeah. So I remember one time that I was on campus, like after talking with one of the international students advisors, who was not like an academic advisor. It was just like in terms of like what's possible and what's not legally. And having a conversation with a loved one and being like, it just really feels like I am building life on like
an unsteady
in the air,
base.
Right? Yeah. Like the rug can be pulled from under me.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And I think that is something that fundamentally shapes the way that you go through your life as an international student and worker. There are no guarantees at any point. And so it's very difficult for someone who has not gone through that experience or has like witnessed it firsthand to really understand the ways in which like that shapes your understanding of the world and your own life. And so I think that for me, what was really helpful to cope with that were like a couple different things. The first one was really going back to, okay, like who I am, like who I want to be, what do I want to create and how, right? And so like you can have a plan or you can have an idea, and you also need to be open to that not panning out that way. There's been several points in time in which like I just didn't know if I was going to like stay in the US or going abroad. And I just like kept holding on to this, the vision that I had for myself of what I wanted to create. Particularly, like when it comes to this business, this has been in my mind for like so many years that I was just like finding my way to that moment where I was like, okay, this is it. Like it's lunchtime. Right. And so I think that was like really helpful for me. The other thing that is like massive is like my loved ones and my communities, to have like that feeling of being able to come home to different places, right? Whether it's like I'm visiting my family in Argentina or I'm coming here, and like there's always a sense of home and the people around rallying around me to, like love me and support me through it. Really make it so that when it gets hard, you still can like lean into, these are my people, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and just, like feeling that love. So I would say like those are the two main things. And then the third one that has been really helpful for me is kind of like think about it strategically. Right. It's like, this is something that one of my mentors once like said to me that really just like changed the way that I think about my life. I was talking with him about, my journey as an international student and worker, and like what's possible and what's not. And he said to me, you're an improviser. Improvisers play with the environment. How are you going to play with this environment? And that just like fundamentally changed the way that I was seeing my own experience. But also he was mentoring me in how to bring in applied improv into my coaching. And that was like such a beautiful example of doing that. Shout out to EC Gessel. He's been my applied improv mentor. And
so you did improv like for fun? Because I don't think we covered this with everyone. You did improv like classes, acting.
Yes. So that was something that helped me a lot throughout grad school. And I would say like it's a fourth part of this answer, right? Like something that really helped me was exploring my creativity and thinking about like different hobbies that allowed for me to like see myself fully as a person and not just as like the international student or the international worker with the one visa. And so the thing that I did within like the first like 2 years of moving to the US is I signed up for a free improv class. And then like I took a workshop and then I immediately started taking classes, and I've been doing improv for almost 10 years now.
Whoa.
Yeah, so primarily at Washington Improv Theater. That has also been like a home for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so that, led into a lot of different ways of finding creativity throughout my days and my work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them has been to really understand the principles and power of improv, not just on stage, but also off stage, and applied into other disciplines, including coaching. So yes.
Yeah, your improv skills must be crazy, not just from like the improv classes and your involvement for 10 years, but you were tested in life. Like immigrating to the US, you were learning, you're not taking things for granted, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You're very conscious that anything could be taken away within a day. And it also sounds like you're building resilience. Like you've had so much training in flexibility and resilience. It's like your ability to just like adapt to different situations, and like your resilience levels must be like here.
I want to believe that. And at the same time, I will say, there is definitely the lows, right?
Right, but we're all human.
Yes. And so I think that that's where like the people around you are so fundamental to it. Like I have absolutely been in like processes with like job searches where it's like I was like 2 months into like potentially doing an international move because I didn't know where I was landing next. And just, I remember I used to go back and forth between Argentina and the US for a couple of years, especially like right after, or like on the tail end of, like the COVID policies for flexibility at work and all this stuff. And I remember just like the anxiety of like the uncertainty of it all, like getting to me. And so like I would just like be bawling, and my sister would be like, let's go for a drive. And so they would just literally just drive me around the neighborhood in Argentina, just like for me to get some fresh air and perspective so that I could, just like build myself up again as I was like navigating that uncertainty.
That's a great sister. I used to go on drives by myself because during COVID, when everything shut down in 2020, I was living in Arlington.
Yeah.
Right. Just on the opposite side of the Key Bridge, basically. And the drive, I used to have a car, and like a car meant freedom to me. But like the freedom was all taken away when the world shut down. And being like enclosed in my apartment, working, living, sleeping, whatever, I felt trapped. So sometimes for my mental health, I would get my car, I would go on a drive to Reagan National Airport because first of all, that drive is beautiful along the Potomac. Second of all, I love traveling. I love flying. I love the airport.
Yeah.
So I would just like drive just to watch the planes take off and then just do that loop around because you go like right in, you come right back out, and then just go right back along the Potomac home.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. I think that there is something about changing your perspective, even if it is just like changing your environment in that moment, that really helps you, think differently. Yesterday, for example, like I went on a walk and, like I was kind of like in that deep reflection of my own experience so far and what's working and what's not. And I came across like these 3 trees in the park that looked so different because one of them was like completely bare, no leaves. The other one still had like all the like burnt leaves of like fall. And the other one was like full bloom, like in this like purple color. And you could see the 3 of them almost like a triangle. And it just dawned on me how, it was a beautiful representation of how we can be in the same environment, in the same space, and do exactly the same things, or like have the same climate and everything. And each of them is going to have a different stage and a different process within the same cycle. And so like in some ways, like it very much resonated with a lot of like what I am going through personally, but also what I hear from my clients as well in terms of, like the comparisons between like where they are and like where they want to be or where they should be based on what other people are doing. And I appreciated that it was just like that one moment of being like, let me go out for a walk and just like change my perspective and, get some fresh air. And then that like came to mind.
That's deep. Do you ever feel like you've had to prove yourself more as an international professional?
100%.
And how has that affected your mindset and confidence?
Yeah. The biggest part of the experience of an international student or worker is that sense of, connecting it to the trying to build a home of your own.
Mm-hmm.
There is that sense of feeling like you have to prove your worth and prove what you're made of. On one hand, I think like it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, I think, like similar to what we were talking about earlier, you get to see what you're really capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be tremendously empowering, right? When you look back and you start thinking about like all the different things that you went through and you overcame and everything that you have built to this day,
Mm-hmm.
it is a tremendously empowering feeling. And yet there is also that feeling of like not enough, where like you're always thinking that you need to do a little bit more, show a little bit more, and you have multiple people or stimuli asking more from you in different ways. So you cannot cover everything for everyone all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think what happens there is that sometimes you get caught in this like weird loop where on one hand, like you are aware of what you're capable of,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel proud of it. And that builds a confidence that tells you that you can do more. And so then you feel the pull to do more because you have to show in some ways, or you want to feel adequate for like certain spaces or certain roles or certain people. But then I remember using this metaphor of, it's like a Mario Bros when like you keep accumulating the golden stars throughout the game. It's like instead of really holding on to the star and like the trophy that you just got, you kind of like put it in the bag and just keep going.
Oh, okay. It's the same thing as like when you just keep setting goals and they keep getting bigger and bigger and you don't stop to celebrate and acknowledge your progress.
Yes, because there's always more that you can do.
Always,
or like, there's always one more requirement that you need to meet. And the bar is like very high. It happens as a student as well, right? It's like you see the students who are from the area or who are from the country, and like as an international student, for example, like you cannot take breaks, like you cannot go on a sabbatical or put on pause your program because like you are here to complete the program, and so you have to kind of like continue
with like the allotted time on your visa.
Yes. So, and then, there's also that element of the visa, but basically like you have to abide by the rules that are set up by the program and by the visa regulations. And so you don't take breaks if you have like a semester off, right?
I never thought about it that way.
And so like that requires you to push through and keep going. And that can be hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I was in grad school and I would be in a lot of like different, like leadership roles and advocating for grad students and especially for international grad students. And I would always say the same thing. And I keep saying this to this day, which is like international graduate students play a completely different game in academia than their domestic peers. And a lot of people are not even aware of that. Mm-hmm. So you kind of like, you come into a game that is not designed for you or with you in mind, and you're still expected to succeed.
You're measured by the same metrics.
Yeah. I think that's like the fine line that you kind of like have to figure out how to walk, and that sometimes it is like harder because, depending on the day or the season, you might feel like very confident that you have what it takes and you're going to like get there. Or you might also feel like, you know what, I'm exhausted. And there are like multiple people saying that I should do multiple things and not all of them resonate with me. And there is no clear manual on what success looks like because like you have to design it yourself.
You're making it up as you go. Yeah. I'm just impressed by your story and your strength. Like, you've accomplished so much. And, like, there's so much that I take for granted, being born and raised in the U.S. and, like, having English as my first language. The games or the systems were made up for me a lot of the time. And I didn't have to try to navigate through an environment that's not designed for me. So it's just very interesting, like, listening to your experience.
And I will say, you know, like, I've had the fortune of, like, coaching people, like, across countries. And it's very much like a universal experience in that way, right? It's like kind of like the immigrant experience. When you walk away from what you know to build something of your own, a country or an environment that, you know, like it's completely new, you're always going to encounter with these layers of it. And I remember my mom used to send me for a while. There were like very popular back in Argentina, like all these articles about people who would like move to a different country with like $100 in their back pocket and then make it big afterwards. And at one point I said to her, please don't send me this again, because they feel like misinformation.
Oh, okay.
Because you might have the experiences of people who, you know, like hit the jackpot and like they showed up and everything was like ready and easy to navigate. But for the most part, anyone who has even attempted to live abroad and like build a life of their own in a different country, whether that was in a different language or not, but just like a place different from where they were born and raised, they are going to encounter with so much more complexity than I got my $100 and then I started, you know, making it big. And so I think that a lot of people do not necessarily acknowledge or understand that level of nuance in the experience of someone who decided to move abroad.
For sure. And now I'm just reflecting, because we were talking before this about how you were kind of in like a low of your entrepreneurship journey, and it's been 3 months and maybe you're not realizing the type of success that you would wanted to or imagined at this stage. But I just want to like take a moment to like pause and then sit with you to reflect on like how much you've accomplished in your life. First of all, you're the first one to go to college, graduate college, and get your PhD in your family. Like, okay, that's one thing. And like people in America do that as well, but they didn't grow up in Argentina or a different country and then move to a completely different country, live alone and try to navigate this themselves for the first time. Then you get the PhD. Then you enter the work world in the US. Now you're living far from family, going through like figuring out different visas. And then you get to the point where you sponsor your own visa. And then you leave your safe for corporate job, I imagine, and you become a full-time entrepreneur and you're working towards your dream. You have had this goal and you've never given up on yourself, and you've had to find the inner strength to do that. And your unique experience, you can use that as a strength for the clients that you serve, and you are using that as a strength. And like you can resonate with people in a way that like I or others can't. And so I think you're going to be really successful. I think it definitely takes time and patience, but I can already see how strong and resilient and successful that you are.
At the beginning of recording, I told you I might not, like, I probably won't cry, and now I feel like I'm tearing up. Thank you so much for all that.
I can give you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think that I was thinking about this when I was going through the first job search before even graduating. And I've always thought about it the same way, and I continue doing that. I don't see a point in lifting myself if I'm not lifting others along the way. For me, it has always been about figuring it out so that I can like open doors for myself and be able to open the space for other people.
And that's beautiful.
Thank you. And, you know, like, I think that there is there is something to be said, especially in a moment like this one, where it feels like the floor is shifting under us in like so many ways.
Yeah.
The scary thing is also probably the thing that is going to like help us find fulfilling lives, which is to divest from the prescribed paths and solutions and ways of thinking, not just about career development, but also, like careers do not happen in a vacuum. It's about our lives as a whole. And so I think that, to the extent that I am able to walk the talk, it's hard, but I would rather do that.
Yeah, I see that. And then that grounds your business and your work in authenticity. And that speaks volumes. That matters so much more than people who are just out here doing things because they see people making a lot of money and they want to do it, or just like putting themselves above others and not really being into the service of helping others, or, like providing for others, whatever you're working towards. If it's like very selfish, I don't think you're going to naturally realize as much success than if you operated in authenticity like you're doing.
Well, jury's out. We will see how it goes.
Catch us in a year.
We'll do the follow-up.
We'll be speaking at your conference. We'll be running our own conferences.
Amen.
Okay, let's get more into your coaching practice.
Yes.
So through your coaching practice, you've worked with postgraduate professionals globally.
Yes.
So in the US and abroad. What are some of the biggest mental health challenges that your clients face when building careers and or making career pivots?
Yeah. I think that it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about just now in terms of like the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty of how to get there, and also, like asking yourself how I am enough, right? Most of the themes that come up have to do with this idea of not necessarily having a clear understanding of everything that you have accomplished so far, everything that you bring to the table, everything that you are, and also everything that you want for yourself. Because there is that element of not feeling grounded or anchored where you're at in terms of location or, like visa status or stuff like that, really puts you in this mindset where like you feel a little bit like a leaf in the air.
Yeah.
And so that is like the biggest blocker or barrier that we tend to like work around. And then the other element of that, of course, is like there are other factors that play into how that, manifests, because it's very different whether you are a professional who's like a single person with a certain amount of resources versus someone who maybe is like partner up or has a family of their own. And so the barriers and factors that you're going to face as part of your decision making at every point are going to be different. And so to really think about what's possible, I always make a lot of emphasis on who you are, what you have done so far, what you really seek for yourself and want for yourself, and start from there as a way of like, okay, then we will think about everything else that kind of like makes up the environment that you play with, right? When you were saying earlier. So I would say that that's the biggest part. The uncertainty and kind of like finding some grounding in yourself first and like what you want for yourself. And then there are like these other layers of information and resources to make that possible.
That makes sense. Out of curiosity, do you mainly work with international professionals or domestic professionals?
Both. I would say also because like I don't only work with clients in the US. And so because of that, like they might be international professionals in a different country. That's the universality of, like the different processes that they go through, but it's in a very different context from being an international student or worker in the US. So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I know that imposter syndrome and self-doubt are common, especially with being international and coming to a new country and learning the systems. but also especially for those navigating new professional environments, whether that's like you're born and raised in your country, right? And you're still here and you're making a career pivot into a new type of career, or you're an international professional, you come over and you're like, okay, I thought I was going to do government politics or something.
Yeah.
And then now I'm getting into career development, career coaching. So what advice do you give your clients who struggle with not feeling good enough or out of place in their careers?
Yeah. So one thing that I'll start by as a small caveat is usually as a coach, and any coach, like trained as such, tends to avoid giving direct advice on, like do this or do that, just because like the practice of coaching is one of like guidance and holding the client's agenda in mind. So usually we do a lot less prescribing or suggesting and a lot more of navigating the conversations in a way where like our ultimate truth is like the client always holds the answer to their own question.
This is sounding like therapy.
With other caveats as well, important to like clarify that coaching is not therapy.
Yes.
And so, like that can be a whole other episode on that. But
yes, we don't want to conflate the two, but the same principles go from my experience.
Yes.
Like therapists, when you're working with them, they're not giving you direct advice. They're asking you questions and allowing you to dig deeper into yourself.
Yes. And so when it comes to like mentoring colleagues and students, which I also do a fair amount of, I would say like the biggest advice that I have is to explore where they're at from a place of curiosity, of learning about what they're interested in, what resonates with them, what doesn't, because in that initial space is always going to be uncomfortable. That's the discomfort of being somewhere that you're not familiar with. And to be able to hold that truth and at the same time like identify the lessons, big and small, along the way is going to give you a lot more power to really understand, like whether that is the space that you want to be in, like where you see yourself going from here, what serves you and what maybe doesn't. And that is true, like whether you're just moving to a different environment or if you're just starting a new job and, like you have to kind of like figure out how things work there. And so I think for a lot of us, especially when we are like very much like type A overachievers, like we want to get everything right and perfect right away.
Relatable.
Yeah. And so you want to give yourself the space and the grace to understand that you're not going to be that right away. It's going to be a process. So first you want to allow yourself to learn through it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I like the curiosity bit. For many professionals, I know career transitions can trigger uncertainty, like you were saying. It can trigger anxiety. It can trigger fear, nerves. What are some key mindset shifts that have helped you personally and your clients, if relevant, stay resilient through pivots in your career?
So a few of them we've been talking about throughout our conversation, right? Like the first one has been like, to me, the most powerful one has been like the playing with the environment and instead of fighting against
the
it.
Improv. Yeah.
Especially because I think that a lot of the times we tend to do as a way of feeling like something is moving. And whether that is, just like going in circles or just like doing busy work and overdoing as a way of like trying to move forward, it's almost like you're running on the spot and you're not moving. And so that depletes you.
Yeah.
And it's basically because like you are fighting the circumstances or the environment in a way that is like counterproductive for you. So one thing that has been very helpful for me over time is to like learn to sit in that silence and that discomfort of like, okay, like something is not working. Let me just like slow down, ground myself and figure it out. You cannot outthink the problem. You kind of like have to explore it and like go through it. And so I think for me, the main part of that playing with the environment is getting yourself to a space of acceptance of like, what am I here to learn? And so from those insights and that time of like sitting and waiting and reflecting on it, there is more gold that comes from that than the overdoing and overthinking, like the nonstop. One thing that I also encounter a lot among clients is there is this feeling that we're always running and chasing that directly connects to what I was just saying. And so the biggest blocker that comes up is just feeling like you don't have enough time. You don't have enough skills. Like you don't have enough anything, right? And so that can be a very difficult space to be in. And so usually what I do as a coach is, like use our time to hold the space for unpacking where that feeling is coming from, like what is contributing to it. And then also figuring out small tweaks that allow to make a little bit more of that breathing room over time. Even if it is just like 5 minutes per day of doing something that gets you closer to what you are envisioning, even if it doesn't feel enough, like you're still seeing a little bit of that progress, right? And so it is very much about thinking the different ways in which we can open up that space for the quiet and the deep breath that then allows for you to gain a different perspective.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, do you have a concrete example of how you've played with your environment?
Yes, I have a few, but I'm just going to go with this one that comes to my mind now. One thing that is very common among international students, especially those who hold the J1 visa for students and scholars, is that there is a regulation that for a lot of like these J1 visas, you are required to accumulate 2 years in your home country before you change to other visas in the US. So in my case, I had a 1-month trip to the US sponsored by Fulbright Commission, where I was a sponsor for a J1 visa that had that requirement. Okay. So in my case, it would be Argentina.
Okay.
And so I was at a time where, like I was exploring what was next, and I was likely going to need a type of visa that required me to complete those 2 years before I even, like switched status. And it was a time where, like I'm not going to go into like too much detail, but basically it was a very uncertain time. It was also a very stressful time. Also 2021, 2022, we were like dealing, like with the aftermath of the COVID pandemic outbreak and all of this stuff. It was like a lot of uncertainties all around.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And it felt like a very uncomfortable space to be in. But at the same time, I had to kind of like come to terms with what do I want for myself? How can I make sure that I am creating as much space and opportunities for myself down the line? What do I need to do? And what was clear then was that I needed to like travel back and forth for over a year so that I could spend time with my family at a time that I needed to spend time with my family, continue working in the US in the job that I had at that time, and also make sure that, like whatever happened, I was able to open the space for the possibilities. And towards the end of that year, there were a lot of possibilities. There was the possibility of staying in the US. There was also the possibility of like moving abroad. It was at a time where I was like very much like, well, maybe this is a time where I open my own business. But, like that got delayed. But the process of traveling back and forth, in addition to the uncertainty of like what was going to happen next, not having like the clarity of exactly what my next job would be, and I think that one was like a perfect example of how, on one hand, I haven't always been able to play with the environment as easily as I would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I eventually like embraced it and I went through it and I did what I needed to do to give myself the chances that I wanted for myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about going full-time entrepreneur. So I know leaving a stable career, which you and I both did, to go full-time as an entrepreneur is a huge leap. And first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's awesome. What was your mental health journey like during that transition, and what fears or doubts have you had to work through so far?
Yeah. I would say what was interesting for me is I've had the idea of this business for a long time, at least like 2021. It almost felt like I was waiting for permission of some sort for it to happen. And then 2024 is what I have been calling the year of the unraveling. I had so many personal and professional circumstances that really confronted me with where I was at and started making it very clear to me that I needed to course correct or just, kind of like reassess where I was at to go for what I wanted. There were like a few, in particular, personal circumstances related to my family. And, I've always wanted to build a life that was more flexible and integrated so that I could be there for them more.
Like travel when you need to.
Yes. And there were like a set of circumstances that really required for me to be like, whatever it takes, I'm going to be there for you.
Mm.
And that was like a massive nudge to really start assessing, is it possible for me to do it? I will say another thing that was like very interesting to me is that was like last year, I also received initially the approval for sponsoring my own green card. If you had asked me when I first started my PhD that I would find myself in that situation, I would probably have said like, you're out of your mind. And yet it happened. And I was like, oh, wait a second. Yes, there is so much value, right? In like what I have done and what I have achieved so far and what I have created. And so then that allowed for the possibility to also explore other alternatives to sponsor myself. And so now I have an O1 visa. It's a work visa that allows for me to work for AGV Services LLC. And so all these different pieces in the personal, legal, professional, academic space kind of like put me in this headspace of, I need to do this now. And so it was hard, not gonna lie. I was like very much like terrified as I was doing it. I think that it was also difficult to explain why, especially because I was at a job that was a prestigious one for a very prestigious organization. And so there was that element of like, why are you doing this? Like, you're out of your mind. And for me, it was another moment of like, I'm not going to be wrong any time that I bet on myself. And so I remember having this conversation with my dad, who to this day, I don't think that he's excited about my current circumstances. I think that he is like terrified out of his mind about what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's, I think, a natural concerned parent mindset.
Yes. But I went ahead and I did it. And there was a peace of mind that came to me as I was able to be there for my family when I wanted and needed to. And then to also start feeling how going through the days and working on building this business just feels so fulfilling and exciting. And I, like go through conversations with colleagues in the career development space, and I just like have a wonderful time, but also just like really thinking about how to address so many of the issues that come up and really like serve students and young professionals in a way that empowers them to build a life that they're excited about and that resonates with them. And to also like work with, professionals even like after their PhD graduation or mid-level, and they're exploring what's possible, and they have been like changing jobs and not finding a job that resonates with them. And so like they feel like they're caught in this loop of like never ending job searching, and to really be able to hold that space for them and help them find their own way. It's like tremendously fulfilling. And so like that keeps me moving forward. And, like to answer your question, there is also the elements of what I was like talking about at the very beginning. There is all that excitement, and also, the moments where you hear a little bit of like that self-doubt, or like you hear those like, oh, Analía, maybe you shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
In that moment, especially when I hearing those thoughts or hearing those opinions, I kind of like go back to what's driving me, what's the vision that I have, and then trying to focus on the lessons that I'm extracting along the way. What have I learned this week that I can implement so that I can do better next week, and just keep at it.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a really strong why behind your business, and that is what I've heard and learned and seen is what keeps a business sustainable.
And the financial part too, but
that too. That too. Sometimes my head can be in the clouds, but like if you don't have a strong why, the motivation will what is it?
Yeah, it will like go down. Like the way that I explain it or like visualize it is like, like there is that initial moment in time where like you're carried by your faith and the excitement of everything that is new. And you're just like, yes, I'm like hit the floor running. Right. And
that's
like,
me right now.
And you keep at it, and and you see like the early proof of concept and validation and all this stuff. But then there is also that in between, like a little bit of the dip in that initial enthusiasm, and then that's where like the resilience and the kind of like commitment to the why and to how to go about it and all this stuff like starts feeling like more tested, right? One could say that this is also the case for like job searching, right? Whether you are in a job and you continue in it while you're job searching, or even if you like quit a job or like lost a job and then you go about it, like there is that element of you might have something like pulling you forward, but there is also that element of keeping your spirits up and like the strength of your spirit while you're going through it to get to the outcome. And I think that for me, it has been very much about the curiosity and the learning as I'm doing, paired with the motivation of really knowing that this is something that is important, that I have witnessed it, I have lived through it, and I know that it matters to so many people. And so I'm willing to, keep at it.
Good for you. That's awesome. I'm happy for you that you're realizing fulfillment too, because there's many forms of wealth. And money is just one of them. But like happiness and emotional fulfillment is a huge one.
Yeah.
That often sometimes people disregard.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. And to be able to like be there for your family, have a good support system, and then you be a good support system for those that you love, it's another form of wealth. Or like love even is like a form of wealth. So that's cool.
Thank you.
So I know the journey of entrepreneurship, especially because at this point you're a solopreneur, right?
Yes.
Okay. It can be lonely. It can be mentally exhausting. How do you prioritize your mental well-being while running your business?
I think this connects definitely to the learning by doing. So one thing that I realized, I've been thinking a lot about the parallels between entrepreneurship and grad school. And there is a fair amount of them. But one in particular is, like when you're going through grad school or you're a researcher, and your work is research, especially in academia, you tend to not have very strong boundaries. And so then everything is in your mind about your research 24/7. And similarly, when you are a business owner, especially like as you just get started and you're kind of like wearing all of the hats at the same time, I found myself in a very similar headspace where it's like, going through the day thinking about like all these different elements of the business and ruminating about it nonstop. And so a few things that I have been implementing for myself is I have set up a schedule for myself so that it's like, okay, like I work these hours. These are the blocks of time that I work in specific things at a time. And so like I go test and iterate to make sure that, like what works and what doesn't, so that I can eventually like find routines that make it more sustainable for me to like work on specific needs for the business. So the first part is the figuring out the schedule so that it makes it sustainable over time. The second thing that I have implemented for myself is I am using one of these customized do not disturb on my phone.
Oh, I like that.
But for work. And so basically what I do is for a specific range of hours, I do not receive notifications from my work email or even LinkedIn, because I also tend to be there a lot for work. And so that way it allows for me to create a little bit more of that space where it's like, okay, once I'm done with the schedule for work, and then like my phone filters everything work related, then, you know, like I'm able to unplug a little bit. So I do that in terms of like personal, you know, like day-to-day routine. And then what I do is also I reach out to my friends and my peers, and, you know, like I try to find creative ways of working with other entrepreneurs or like meeting with friends, because I am very much like a person who needs her community and like to collaborate a lot. And so I'm like actively seeking those spaces and the people who are also kind of like in the trenches with me, so that we can kind of like support each other through the process.
Yes, I got advice before leaving my corporate job from previous entrepreneurs. It's an emotional roller coaster, and you need to have a really strong support system. And it's a good idea to surround yourself with people who truly get the emotional roller coaster and people that are in the trenches like yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I've been grateful to have you in the trench.
Likewise.
So we've talked about a lot. We've talked about your coaching practice and full-time entrepreneurship life, your life previously in Argentina and then moving to the US and how you've navigated that and different types of visas.
Yeah.
And we've talked about your coaching. So you have a lot of experience with career pivots and career development. If you could give one piece of advice to young professionals, because a majority of my audience is young professionals, young professionals struggling with career uncertainty and mental health challenges, what would your one piece of advice be?
2. The first one is build your support system. For me, it has always been key to count on and lean into my loved ones, whether that was like my family, my friends, but also I'm a big advocate for therapy and for coaching and for mentors. And so we never get to where we're at just by ourselves. So it's important to be able to identify the people who are going to give you a piece of advice, hold space for you as you're trying to figure things out for yourself, the ones who are going to like rally for you and believe in you even when you do not feel that way about yourself. That is a massive piece of your success over time. I know that it's for me, for sure. I would have not gotten here if it wasn't for all of these people in my life. And granted, sometimes they do not always play the same role. I love my family and I love my parents. They might not always agree with everything that I am doing, right? And so like then it takes some discernment on how heavily you lean onto like different people at different times. But to have that community and that support system and to be able to feel less isolated through that process is a key part of it. So that is like the one piece of advice. And then the second one is more like an internal one and kind of like connects to what we were talking about in terms of like the gaining awareness that I also facilitate as part of my work, which is do not discount who you are, what you have been going through, and what you have achieved so far. Especially when we're just starting in our careers, there is a tendency to believe that there is more to be done. Anything and everything that you have done is still not enough for something else. And sure, you're not going to be, you know, like at the top of your field in a year after graduation. but there's still a lot of value in the experiences that you have had that you can then leverage to build on that and explore ways to get closer to what you're aiming for. I would start by always doing the inventory of what you have done so far, what you have achieved, what you have learned. And based on that, think about what you want next. And I'll do a brief plug, but I do have a free career inventory on my website. If you go to the website agvservicesllc.com, you will find a free career inventory that allows you to kind of like go through this exploration, like in a little bit of a more structured way. So anyone who is interested in doing that exercise, they can like go to the website or message me on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I will share the link with them. And that is an exercise that does not have an expiration date, because we're constantly evolving and experiencing different things and learning new skills. And so to frequently reconnect with yourself in that way will give you a lot more information and clarity about where you're at, what you have to offer, and how to make the most out of that to take your next step.
Totally agree. I actually was just working with one of my coaching clients on just like documenting the experience you had. Like he was thinking of making a career move to a different role and like thought that he had no experience that he could apply to this role. But when talking through his experience thus far professionally, I'm like, wait, this, and this. Or this from your personal life, something that you do as a hobby, but you've had a lot of practice in and you're really good at, is a strength of yours that you can use in a different way and actually apply as like a resume builder for this. And I've also I've had that piece of advice given to me by mentors and coaches, because then I'm like, it's hard to step outside yourself and see. And then after taking in that piece of advice, I'm like, oh, wait, I do have a lot of experience that I'm discounting. And then I'm able to share that same advice with others, like coaching clients.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. And that's why I think like the two pieces of advice are so important together, right? Yeah. Because we don't know what we don't know. And we all have blind spots.
Right. So, and you can't do it alone. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah, I love that. Okay, where can people find you if they want to follow you on social media, LinkedIn, newsletter?
Yes. So you can follow on LinkedIn and Instagram, AGV Services LLC. And then you also can sign up for our newsletter at agvservicesllc.com. We have a weekly newsletter with career reflections, recommendations, and resources. And for subscribers of the newsletter, we also host every other week the community coffee hours, which are a 1 hour meeting for people to connect with one another, network, and also talk everything career development with a side of coaching. I love facilitating these meetings. We have people who are joining who are in graduate school. We have entrepreneurs. We have people who are considering career pivots within the same industries or across industries. And it's always a great space to reflect together, feel less isolated through that process, and also really understand the commonalities that can come up. Even if circumstances are very different, there is a lot about reflecting and learning about ourselves so that we increase that level of awareness. And then we are also able to, as I say, go through the growth that gets you to your vision over time. That's a key motivator behind all of the resources and work that we do as AGV Services LLC.
Yes, and I will include all of this in the show notes, the description, so people can easily access that. And as an extra plug, I've been to some of her community coffee hours, and they are great. I've really enjoyed it. I've done a lot of reflection. We did some journaling, some sharing, helped me feel less alone in my journey and learn more about myself and my why and my values. So that's been cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a really great time in this conversation. I look forward to, continuing supporting each other through our entrepreneurship journeys.
Yes, I love that. This has been great to catch up. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please share it with them. You can also support the podcast by subscribing, rating, and reviewing on whatever platform you're either watching or listening on. And please make sure you are following and auto-downloading the show because it is huge for my business. If you're on Apple, go to the show page, The Naked Truth with Lauren, tap the follow button in the top right, and then tap the down arrow to auto-download. It also might be buried in the settings, so the little gear button, the auto-download might be there. If you're on Spotify, go to the show page, tap the plus sign to follow, then tap the gear button for settings and click auto download. On any other platform, tap where it says follow or subscribe. As always, any feedback is welcome. Feel free to let me know what you thought about this episode. Let me know if you have any new ideas for new episodes, for guests to interview. You can email thenakedtruthpod0@gmail.com. And you can also follow along on Instagram at thenakedtruth.pod. Catch you on the next episode.